well, we can't call it to order, but we're on, I guess, and we're at one short of quorum. So what we'll do is, even though we can't do anything official tonight, including calling it to order, we can review the agenda and hopefully just have reports.
Right.
If that's okay. We won't even be able to do bills and pay orders, so we did them last week, I think.
Yeah, and
Am I
I
right?
just did. Do I not sign?
So, yeah, you can review them, and you can. She can still review them while she's looking.
so you can review them and sign them.
We just won't be able to. We just won't be able to take a vote on. But I would hope 2 people will do that.
Yeah, and then we can vote on the next subsequent meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you're willing to sign them, that would be helpful.
I had anticipated for that night.
But you don't need me to get 2 board members doing it.
No, I mean actually sign checks.
Oh, yeah, well, I can do that.
Cindy Davis wouldn't unless we have a board meeting.
Okay. So if 2 of you will review those tonight, then I can go in and do that later, after this. Okay. All right, so we can't call it to order. We already had our superintendent evaluation, which we didn't have a quorum for either. Additions or corrections we can't do. Members of the public, no one's here. Correspondence, I don't have any. Administrative reports.
Well,
Just for the record, everyone, I just want to, if I can just mention, Doreen had a death in the family and unexpectedly was called out of town today. And I encouraged her to go ahead and take that time. And even though she had sent a lot of reports for us, I encouraged her to bump as much of that as she could to March so that she could participate with us. And I know she did mention, especially about the NEASC report, that she wanted to be able to share her feedback on that. And I told her not to worry, that would work in March just as well as now. And so that's why she's not here. But I'll turn it over to you, Stephen.
right, so I met with Dr. Ruckman today, and she confirmed that the NEASC materials, although you certainly received them and should look over them carefully, she really thinks that they warrant her direct explanation and analysis interpretation. This is part of a report to the New England Association of Schools and Colleges regarding progress we've made on the goals or the issues that association wanted to hear about to continue accreditation. So it is a very important matter regarding Leland and Gray, and certainly does warrant board's questions and attention at our next meeting. The fall NECAP results, she also analyzed pretty carefully in the documents, and if you had any questions about those, I certainly want to take them and share them with her so that she could speak to them at the next meeting more directly. I have copies here, and the basic summary is that there have been improvements in most areas, but certainly we have a long way to go, and that we haven't yet at Leland and Gray met the statewide averages in most cases, although the 8th grade reading was noteworthy. And I spoke to that with the newspaper article, although it wasn't published. But there's some other quotes. This is Vermont Gets Ready for New Tests was the theme of this article. And
Thank you for that.
I think, I just share with the board if you haven't had a chance to read it. It's a bit lengthy. We're going to try to scan it and get out to all the boards. But, I'm just at the end here. Yes. Stephen John, this Wyndham Central Superintendent, said NECAPs were only the latest in a very long line of standardized assessments that educators have been using to try to improve instruction. Of course, I'm referring to my history in the state, my career in the state, from California achievement tests to something called Terra Novas, to something called to the NSREs, New Standards Reference Exams, and then the NECAP. I think that about does it for most of our schools for the past 30 or 40 years. Anyway, quote, I look at it as an evolution. I think they get better and better as we go on. John said, we have plenty of work to do. It'll take a long-term and consistent effort to make a difference. It's a long road, and we've got a long ways to go. What I'm referring to there is the amount of investment we have to continue to make in our professional staff and teaching. improving instruction. And this doesn't happen overnight, but the initiatives we have in balanced literacy and what we call the MACES, or the mathematics initiative, pre-K through 12, just need consistent resource sourcing and resources allocated to bring that about. We're getting a good response from our professional staff in both of these areas. They see it as being really productive, and I know that the elementary school results were really very encouraging. Wardsboro had some outstanding gains in math, and they've been the longest involved in the Dr. Sharma training. Also, Faunus and Pinnell clearly has been an initiative for literacy in the elementary schools, and things are certainly encouraging. And that's going to make it much more possible for Leland and Gray students to be better prepared and to meet our expectations at this grade level. It has to start from the beginning.
It does, Stephen, and we talk about that quite often, but it's also critically important that we stay focused on a pre-K-12 education.
Continuum.
Exactly, and it's so hard to do that as we sit in our own towns and everybody's doing what they believe, and I know for them it is the right thing, but if we don't stay focused at an administrative level and a board level, the pre-K-12 piece is what is going to be critical to seeing improvement, most especially up here at our level, because we can keep pounding as much as we want, but if they aren't coming in prepared to learn, and I'm not saying they're not, I think they are, and I do think we're doing an excellent job in Wyndham Central. I feel pretty good about the direction we're going, but I hope that if there's something the Leland Gray Board can emphasize, it's that.
It's consistent commitment.
Being at the same level, at the same high level.
That's right.
Not a bunch of kids coming in here and a bunch coming in here, so these people have to wait for them to catch up in middle school.
Absolutely. And, it's great that we get kids from outside our SU too, but the majority of our kids do come from within our SU, and so that can make a big difference. So, thank you.
Thank you. Were there any other questions for the principal?
And is everybody comfortable with putting all this off and holding your comments and questions for Doreen to be back? Right, until we have a forum as well. I would love to see a bigger board here.
Actually, Doreen had in mind the projectors up, because originally we had scheduled a presentation where she was going to do visuals, to help the public understand the points she's making, but
which I would love to do. I think that'd be very helpful. And again, it's not just that we don't have a quorum; it's that we don't have a full board. The board needs to be engaged.
Needs to see all this, right.
So I'm hoping at our next meeting they will be here. Okay. So, Stephen, you sent your report.
Yes, I had a February report out. Did we have any? I see some comments here from Bruce. Questions or comments about my monthly report? Certainly welcome. What do you got there, Bruce? You're right in the margins. I know that's a good sign.
Not necessarily. These were my thoughts. These were my thoughts.
Well, you can keep your thoughts if you like. I'm not trying to pry.
You can share them.
The item number 2 talked about the letter that was sent out by my good friend Oliver Olson.
Oh, yes.
Right.
And at the Reds meeting in Jamaica,
Red information meeting.
He presented he said that, what did he say about our college?
Yes, this was, I refer to this in the report. It's the student college enrollment data from something called the Student Data Clearinghouse, and that tells you how many students are still enrolled in post-secondary education in a college or two-year institution 16 months after graduation. So what that means is they've entered, say you have 100 students in the graduating class, and 50 of them go to college. Those 50 are what counts, and then out of that 50, they're seeing how many of them are still enrolled in that school 16 months later as sophomores. Well, maybe they're not sophomores, but they're still enrolled.
How does that cover kids who are who take a gap year and
Yeah.
then
Yeah.
they would then be enrolled that 6 months later.
And who transfer.
Yeah.
And transfer. There are lots of reasons to question this data. I'm very surprised that it's actually posted on the AOE website, the Agency of Education now. And I have called that to the Secretary's attention. But, so I provided there the second-year data comparisons just to illustrate that this, in a small school, this is a very volatile measure in terms of percentage. Because after all, if you have only 5 students graduating, which is the case in Cabot School or something, you can go from 25% to 75% or 20% to 80% pretty fast.
Yeah.
Or back down. So, and it's no doubt that the data, I don't know whether I spoke to this, but the data over time, we compared 2 years, really indicates that larger schools have a more consistent rate of retaining enrollment at the 16 months. And that's partially because of the numbers. I also reason that a thing that we should be concerned about is that, after all, most of the institutions of higher education that our students go to are larger places than Leland and Gray. And there is a cross-cultural jump of experience in terms of education, institutional relationship, relationship with your peers and also the institution being larger, that often students from smaller settings are not as well prepared to cope with. So, but I wouldn't jump to the conclusion that argues that we should all be bigger schools. That's not an accurate conclusion. But on the other hand, Mr. Olson did compare Leland and Gray unfavorably with Byrne-Burton on this particular measure. Now, I offered in my report, as you know, 2 other measures. One was the SAT scores, and certainly Leland and Gray held up pretty well on the SAT scores, comparable anyway, but once again, the larger schools tended to do better on those, although some didn't. Springfield and so forth didn't do better than Leland and Gray. Then we get to another indicator, which I think is really quite important for those people concerned about success at higher education, and that is the AP classes and the number of students that take AP tests and score what's considered a passing grade 3, 4, or 5. And according to college boards from 2011, was it, Bruce? Which year did I put in there? I think that was what I was... Oh, 12. No, 2012.
12, yeah.
Now, that's a class that is really more, has, more result from the administrative change, the instructional leadership change here at Leland and Gray. And we hope that trend continues. But those scores compared favorably with even Byrne-Burton. So that is the percentage of students who got passing scores who took the test.
76% here. This excluded all other schools, including BBA and Brattleboro at 61%, Bellows Falls at 59%, and Green Mountain at 48%. So we were above everyone on that.
Now, one thing you can take from my report is, well, you pick out the statistics, you can say what you want. That's another thing. And you want to be really cynical. But in fact, the most recent data is the 2012 data regarding the AP exams, and the SAT scores, I think, were from 2012 as well. I've forgotten.
They were.
2011, 2012. Okay. So this other data from the Data Clearinghouse was from 2009, which is what Mr. Olson presented originally, and then I found 2010 data to compare with them. So anyway, that's...
Data is important, and we all need to be...
I did share this.
The demographics are hugely different between Byrne-Burton and our area, too. The financial ability that kids in Manchester have compared to the financial, and some of our kids may have to take a year off in between to earn some money or save, or you're not comparing.
That was part of what Oliver was pushing for, and pushing fairly hard, I thought, that he was promoting Byrne-Burton for the town of Jamaica students.
Right.
Oh, and
he's been talking around about it.
And one of his, I think it was the thing where he was talking about the small schools grant, and the idea of school choice was in his letter, and I knew exactly. I said, aha.
But Jamaica is a member of the Leland and Gray Union High School District, and even if we dissolve the Leland and Gray Union High School we will only dissolve it if we have a red, and they will then become a member of that red.
Well, he's got
so
another
I'm a little
agenda,
confused about what his motives are.
I think he has a
He
different
wants
agenda.
the red to allow choice,
Yes.
so that it can go that direction.
Well, anyway, that's, the reason why I responded in such detail is partially because I wanted to make sure that the public who was at this meeting, the board members of Jamaica, knew what the, you know, what the other data shows, that there was an adequate response from the superintendent regarding performance indicators. Now, I have the detailed chart, and I did email that to Oliver Olson, and you know, he can take that. He hasn't responded to me, so I mean.
Well, if I could just make one more comment about this, it's not a matter. What I care about is our kids. Okay, I don't care whether they're going to Leland and Gray or Burton, but right now we have kids that are coming to Leland and Gray, and they deserve the best education possible. And I would suggest that Oliver Olson and everyone else who lives in our valley here and outside, we should be doing everything we can to make absolutely certain that Leland and Gray has the best education they can to provide for these kids. So. You know, a Jamaica resident who's a member of the Leland and Gray Union High School District should be fighting for us.
Yes.
And fighting for us for our kids because, you know, you don't just turn your back on your local community school. We're a good school. Hello. You know, I mean, we offer unbelievable resources for our kids here, and they are graduating and doing really well. Let's do better. Let's not look for something greener on the other side. Let's fight for what we have.
And let people know what we have.
Right. So I would hope that if you have engaged in that conversation with anyone, including Mr. Olson or anyone else, that that's what we should be looking for.
The parents that I've talked to and that were at the meeting, pretty much the parents of those who had children who graduated felt that Leland and Gray was a very good school.
They spoke to that issue.
And in fact, those adults who were in the room who had been Leland and Gray graduates felt that they got a good education. So it was an odd mix of one very strong individual wanting to go a different direction, and I would say a majority of everybody that I've talked to said, oh no, it's a good school. So,
well, in my time down in D.C., I will tell you there was a lot of conversation around charter schools, and I will tell you the feedback, I would say probably 90% of the feedback I heard was, good for you in Vermont that you haven't gone there. Now, we do have our own model of, you can't call it charter schools, but since we have choice here in so many of our towns, we have a little different than a lot of other towns. But they're honest. Other states have not had the success that people would like to see for all of their students by going with a voucher or a charter school system, which is similar to what Oliver's probably trying to talk about. Let's let them have a voucher, or let's let them have a choice, you know, to go to a private institution or a charter school or an independent school. And honestly, I still will say I believe deeply in this public school system that we have.
If we all support our schools, they'll do well. You know,
and they'll do well for every one of us, not those few who either get in on a lottery or who are, you know, fortunate enough to be able to, their parents can provide them transportation to a school elsewhere. And sometimes that is all that stands between a child being able to take advantage of choice and not, you know, is simply financial resources of a family. And that's unfair. I mean, I want my school here, where they have transportation too, to be the best that it can be for those kids that can't go elsewhere. So, wow, this is an important topic. So if this keeps coming up, we need to keep...
See, I wrote my notes for
good
that
for you. I hope I'm not
Because the
speaking
town
out.
meeting's coming.
I hope you all agree with my perspective on this. I feel pretty
I'm sad.
heard it if we weren't.
I'm sad that someone who was one of our political leaders of
Me
our
too.
community is not more supportive of what we're trying to do for our
love to
school.
see those energies
That
going
makes me sad, and I'm disappointed in that because I kind of held him in a different place.
And you know, I would hope the other thing we can encourage people to do is to actually come in and look at what we're doing here, because honestly, at Leland and Gray, the changes that have been made in the last few years here are phenomenal. Phenomenal.
Yeah.
We have so much to be proud of here.
You can
And
certainly see that from the NEASC report and stuff.
absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, the data is there. Ask him to look at it.
Yeah.
Not from 2009, but from right now. This is amazing what we're doing
Yeah,
here.
and Burton's kneecap scores are there too. They're published.
Yeah.
So,
Well, there's a concern
I'll
of
take a quick look.
if students from Jamaica go to Burton, then they're not coming here, and that seems like that changes the count of students here.
Oh,
and,
yeah, sure.
and that messes things up.
Yeah, the number of students from Dover going to Burton has certainly increased. So, other questions for that? I see I got things
comments?
stirred up on that one there. And,
Well, that's good.
it's good, Bruce, calling attention to that. Now, my report obviously is changing to a monthly, more broadly based, and as I see it evolving, perhaps a more political or more, reporting of support and issues that need discussion at the boards.
And now
And advocacy.
the legislative session has begun. I'm
Right,
sure there's
yeah.
going to be more in that area.
Yeah,
for
which
you to
brings me
report
to
on.
another point. I'm going to want to leave here as close to 8 as possible. I'm going to
So are we.
meet with...
yeah.
But anyway, I'm on the road up north because we have an 8 o'clock meeting with the, Ron Staley and I, with the caucus, with the Windham County Representatives Caucus, including the Senate and the House. And this has to do with a number of issues, of technical
was
adjustments
pleased
we
that-
might need on the red. And then we also have the dual enrollment and the sustaining support in a non-competitive way for the Career Center. That's a real
The 2 o'clock
troubling issue
testimony
for us.
is on
That's
that.
2 o'clock, yeah. That's
Yeah.
what I'm...
It's the dual enrollment
And I
piece,
just
and
reviewed that, so I'm
that's
the
important.
benefit of Frank's briefing today and earlier in the week.
And Ron's going to be there, and he's
Right.
very up
Right.
on this one, too.
And,
So
so
Staley.
that's I'll, stay tuned to that. I'll alert you if there's something more that we need to contact. And then there was also a message out about the small schools grant, at least for elementary schools. That's
Yep.
an issue. And that's one to keep an eye on there with the
And just-
legislature as well.
I know Stephen forwarded it. You probably don't need to because we all get it, but you all do get the VPA, VSBA legislative alert
right,
and,
yeah,
and
okay.
report once a month. Sometimes they're more often
You
than
get
that, but
Okay.
it's important that we stay on top of
As our
that.
membership list is right, you should get it, so I'll try to back off of that soon, not twice. But
Yeah, well, I mean,
I
as
do
long as
share it with
everybody's
the
getting it.
APM. I share it with the administrative team, the principals and so forth. 'Cause
Yeah, it is.
that's important.
Do you know of any, like, board professional development things that are coming up with, a bunch of boards together? We used to do a lot of those when I was on
Interestingly enough,
Jamaica School Board.
there's work going on at VSBA right now, and I had a meeting yesterday. It's to review board training and to try to update it and get it board member training, because the new initiative that's coming out of the Vermont Superintendents Association and the Vermont School Boards Association is actually calling for joint training between board chairs and superintendents, and both organizations have bought into that, and so we're going to be making that available, as well as updating the training for every board member. And it's March, there'll be quite a number of new board members around the state. It got canceled yesterday because of the weather, so I'll have a little more information about that the next time we come around. But there will be
little things.
there will
that
be a
go on.
process. We'll stay on the VSBA website. There's always webinars going on, and there's the schedule for the regional trainings, which will happen, I think, again. So I went to them last year. I went to 2 of them. I went to the one that was for board members, and then I went to one that was for board chairs. And I thought they were both very useful, and I would encourage anyone to go through those as soon as the dates are out. I'll make sure everybody knows
And
about it. It's usually in Chester, Green Mountain.
after the elections, I'm putting together a little folder of materials that might be good to orient new board members as well. You might want to look at that before it gets out.
And just because it reminds me of it, Paul had mentioned in an email when he said he couldn't make it tonight, one of the things he would like to see our board talk about is how we speak to the public and our public engagement process, and that it's not just the board chair who should be able to do that.
Right.
The whole board should be able to do that, and in fact should be engaging in public meetings. And I know you guys all did the other night when I was sick and couldn't make it, but he thought that'd be a really good training thing for a board to go through as well. So
That was my other note. Number one, the appointments for the WCSU Math Committee.
Yeah.
And I was wondering if that group could consider have parents' meetings or some way to get the parents to, if not Dr. Sharma, then some of
focus
the
on
teachers, could they actually present something that says,
Good suggestion.
this is how we're doing math today, or
Yeah.
this is...
yeah, because it is
I think
quite
that is a good
different.
suggestion, yeah. I think that's exactly one of the issues that committee will want to take up in terms of implementing successful and making the program more effective. Certainly our investment in professional learning for the staff needs to maximize the impact, and that certainly would be expanding to having parents who are interested have an appreciation for what changes the new Common Core standards are expecting and what we're doing to get our kids there.
And I would also suggest, and I realized, I was telling everybody earlier, I realized my name somehow has been taken off of the mailing list for things like Monday Notes and stuff like that here at Leland and Gray, and I would assume it's because I'm not a parent of a child here
Get you
anymore.
back on there.
And I really think that I'm not
board
the
should
only
be
one
included.
without children on this board, so I think the whole board really should be included on those kinds of communications so that we are aware of, you know, I can go see, and I still do because I love Durin's Monday Notes. I think they're one of the best documents coming out of this school, so I read them anyway on the website, but it was very helpful when I had them come into my inbox, and I would love to have that. Yeah, see, and Bruce doesn't have a child here either, so.
I mean, I can
I probably don't. It goes to an old email that I very seldom
Yeah, but I do think that I don't want to.
Well,
You know, I
it's
don't
no
want
problem.
them to, I don't want the administration to feel uncomfortable with sending board member stuff that's going to parents, but there are certain things I think that go out to the
Monday Notes is a
public.
general document
That's
to
right.
everybody, so that's fine.
So I think it should go out to the board as well.
That's a good point.
Okay.
Take that up. Okay.
So, Frank, did you have anything you wanted to share with us?
Well, I just had a handout that goes with recap of the annual meeting. It was
We'll kind of mix the two together
just
then.
the chart.
Go right
Thank you.
into it.
Yeah, okay. You probably have seen.
Thank you for doing that, by the way, Frank, coming here that night. I normally do go, and I was still sick that night.
Yes, and he had to wait a long time, too, because there was a problem with one of the...
Right, yeah, it's one of the...
They get faxed into here, and Frank has to come here and receive all the faxes, and they have to be officially stamped with the clerk of the Leland and Gray High School District signature, so
The
thank you for
problem was
going
one
through
of the
that
towns
process.
faxed it to my office.
But we didn't know that.
But you didn't know.
So you may have seen this. This is a two-sided sheet. The first side with partially blank is the summary.
Is there an extra one there for the...
Tara needs one.
I did get one.
Oh, you did?
I was just thinking...
share.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the other side is just a little more statistics of the prior year and the percent change. And the most striking number on the reverse side of the sheet is the change in new families. But overall, the good news is we're substantially favorable. Only 67 no votes, 147 yes votes, so 69% in support of the budget, which is a high number over our history of Australian ballots.
Very high.
Yeah.
But it is, with these small numbers, though, Ralph Coleman did have a point about, you know, if a bunch of people could gather and say, let's go vote it down. And it wouldn't take much.
Was there any history with the vote at the meeting being swayed greatly by the number of board members who could vote. I'm assuming that all the board members voted for the budget before the Australian ballot.
Well, the numbers were similar for quite a while, where there's 300 to 400 people that would join. I mean, that was back in the
On
90s.
a few big years, we had them that many. But there were plenty, we had 100.
Yeah, and then it's similar to what we've seen with the Australian ballot subsequent to the bond vote. So subsequent to the 1996 bond vote, we had a large attendance, and then we had this waning interest that went down to 100 people, as small as 100 people. We had the 400 people, you know, in the first Australian bond vote back in 2005, around the 2004, 5, and 7 bond votes. And then we've waned since. Every year we've sort of...
It'd be time to have another bond vote.
I don't know about that, but it's definitely a reoccurring pattern in terms of public
And that would be
engagement.
true whether we vote Australian ballot or we vote off the floor,
That's right.
and that was true whether we voted off the floor
Yeah.
or on paper. Because, you know, when there's a big issue, people come out, and when there's less going on or less controversy around what's going on, they tend to not go out. I did ask around a little bit about the Newfane thing. I was a little concerned because the numbers had dropped so much this year. I honestly think, I don't know what you thought about Obama being in the same town, but there's this tiny little sign that says vote here that's set outside the fire department, and while it was in the paper and all the warnings were out there and everything, and there was actually a sandwich that in front of the town office in Newfane that said for several weeks ahead of time that the Leland Gray vote was February 6th. A lot of people remember to vote when they're driving by the fire department on their way back from Leland and Gray or wherever, from wherever they are, because they see a big sign there. And so maybe next year we can actually make sure that we have a great big sandwich thing saying, you know, vote today on Leland and Gray budget, like Townsend does. They
I'm
seem
sure
to
that
do,
won't hurt.
I think it
But
would
I mean,
help.
we all got this too. So
We
anybody
did.
who had any interest who was going to vote, they can't claim that, oh, they didn't know about it. You know, this
That's
went
correct,
to
but
every
people
single resident.
forget, and sometimes they just need a reminder on that day.
I'm sure that.
I almost
that
forgot.
That's the size of ours, was an 8 by 11 sheet of paper on a piece of well-used cardboard or something.
Well, I will tell you just, you know, anecdotal feedback from the people who were working the polls. I went in, I waited till 4 o'clock to go in that day because I wanted to see what the numbers were, and I was, I think, like the 36th voter, and I was deeply disturbed at that time. And I got feedback from those who were working the polls saying they were a little worried too, not so much because the numbers were low, but because after school lets out, around the time school lets out, a lot of people come in at that time, and that hadn't happened. So it seemed to me that maybe parents weren't voting where they normally would have, and then that made me realize maybe they just needed that reminder, visual reminder when they were driving by, because clearly they hadn't stopped on the way back from Leland and Gray. That was what they told us at the polls. So, and that stayed true. I mean, there certainly were more voters than that, so people came out after work, clearly to vote. But we missed, I think, maybe staff getting out of Leland and Gray and parents leaving Leland and Gray, picking up kids and leaving. It sounded to me like that was missing in Newfoundland.
Maybe even kids the night before going home, you know, and saying,
Yeah.
if they will.
I sent an email to all the...
I know you did. I know you did. But sometimes, I'm telling you, I really think it's often quite visual. You know, I've got a lot of things going on in my head, too. And like you just said, Pat,
I
you
almost forgot.
So sometimes we just, if it's right on Route 30, let's make sure the sign's bigger next year. So,
Well, I was
Very
over
few
49
parents
in
showed up.
Townsend at 6:30.
wow. And how many are there total? 59.
Yeah, when I
Very
got,
few parents showed up at the Red meeting in Jamaica and
Even fewer
Even fewer.
at Townsend last night.
at Newbrook.
Townsend.
And
53.
Newbrook was fewer, 5, something like that.
Probably the
5 or
same
6.
number of people, but, well, maybe.
No, Newbrook was only 5 or 6.
Very few.
Well, going from 281 to 214 is not a
Well, anyway, certainly we have to be concerned that people are just either awfully satisfied, complacent, or just cynical and giving it up. Because we're not, people are not coming out.
Or it's neither. It
Or not,
could
it
be
could be
simply
none of
that
those
they're not.
Well, they could be not interested.
They may have forgotten this year.
Well,
And I,
Except our information meeting only had 2 people, it's pretty amazing that you can have a budget for
That's typical.
$6.8 million.
I think the annual meeting had
But
the
it is
same
typical.
exact
Annual
people who were
meeting.
there the last
we usually
year.
have 3-4 people coming to it.
Okay, well,
All right, well, thank you, Frank. That's
All right.
important, and thank you for all the percentages, because that is very helpful.
I'll send a little graph around that I was working on while we were in our general discussion.
Is that our
Here it is.
voter
Yeah, this is-
participation?
This is
From what year to what year?
This is 2000, when we started in 2006, our first Australian
Okay.
ballot, and here's our 2014.
It has clearly gone down. You might want to show that to the camera.
that's a
as
trend
well.
line.
Yeah, that's the total. This is the yes vote and the no vote. And what,
Interesting.
obviously we don't want to see the decline, but what we do want to see is a widening gap here, and we are seeing that. That's the difference between the yes and the no vote. It'd be nice if it went like that, but it
why don't you
is.
share that with the camera? There's some people interested.
I don't know if he can pick it up or
A little
not.
closer. Can you pick it up?
He can zoom it in.
Okay.
So I'll put some titles on that and send it.
That'd be helpful, Frank. I appreciate that.
That's very good.
It's good feedback. But it's surprising
Yeah.
how consistently it's gone down.
Yep, from about almost 500 votes to 217.
14.
Well, especially if one of the goals of the Australian ballot is to broaden the range of people who can vote, which
Yeah.
seems like a good idea, but if that's what the number looks like, it's not really
Well,
doing that.
yeah. And I'm hoping that those people who are going and voting are really knowledgeable about what they are voting on. And I always had the feeling that when we voted from the floor, and everyone in the room was listening to the back and forth and the engagement and the questions,
To at least
people
have some
really
idea.
did seem to understand what they're voting. And now I'm just guessing that they do, and I hope they do. We've tried very hard to bring out, things like that, the flyer that you just showed, Bauman, and that kind of thing. We're doing our best, I think, to get information out, but there's no way I can ever know.
Can you, I don't know if it's legal, but can you have another little thing or on the ballot or something, say, did you receive the flyer? And
We wouldn't
did
be
you
able to do it on the
actually-
ballot.
On the
but
ballot, you could have a,
We certainly could do a survey.
And
you could have a
did you
survey on the way
read
out, post.
Yeah.
the rationale even, or just,
Polling survey.
just to get
Yeah,
a
we
sense
could
it's
survey the
anonymous,
poll-
why
at the
wouldn't
polls
somebody
and
tell the
stuff, yeah.
truth?
You could always sit there outside in the parking lot.
Ask, that's right. That's what
Yeah.
they call that. What do they call it? The polling survey or something?
Exit
poll.
Exit poll, yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
yeah, let's follow on that. Let's
Yeah.
keep thinking about that. We have another few months before we have to make decisions, but I like the idea of what would help, looking into what would help. Okay,
Because
anything to
being
bring it up,
paid attention.
anything to bring it, the numbers up. Okay, so the new business, we're holding off on this.
I think so,
And
yeah.
I'm going to hold off on the board members' ideas as well, because we're not all here.
I mean, just so the board knows, the bylaws committee did meet, and you'll be informed about the language proposals before the organizational meeting at the WCSU.
Yeah, right now, we're in the process of doing some rewrites of the bylaws and running them by the VSBA. And seeing whether our recommendations for changes to the bylaws are actually following statute. Yes, we just have to make sure that our recommended changes are consistent with statute. And once we've done that, we'll make sure we get that out to all board members so that they're ready to vote on it in March. At March 27th, I think, is our meeting. Okay, anything else? Can't do any of this other stuff?
No, I will call your attention, I think there's an error here on our, minutes. I had those separated. You see there's a set
Yeah.
of minutes that is 12/11/12.
I'm going to suggest we do share feedback on that so we can throw them into the next meeting. And my,
Tara, this
okay,
had to do with the executive session or something, right, Tara? Wasn't that what?
it was really a
When
simple.
Joe sent the executive session minutes, it was the meeting for the approval of the master agreement, and there was a a blank that he had left or a placeholder that he had put in the motion that when I said, what's that supposed to be, he said, I don't know if more information is needed. We need to talk about it. So it was like, it's as if there was a word missing or a phrase that needed to be added, and since I wasn't there, I have no idea what it was.
Here's what it is, and it's really pretty straightforward. I mean, honestly, the placeholder could probably have disappeared.
Right, well, and that was his other thought, but I didn't want to do it without...
But I do think we should share the feedback, and what he left is, I gotta find it here. Okay, it says, Joe Winrick moved to ratify the WCEA/WCSU master agreement between, and then there's a placeholder. So the WCEA-WCSU master agreement, we moved to ratify that agreement, and leaving off between blah, 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 the blank, would have been fine, I think. But we could also add in there between the Wyndham Central, between the Leland and Gray Union High School Board and the Wyndham Central Education Association. So WCA, Leland and Gray and WCA.
Because you're part of that bargaining agreement along with the four other independent school districts.
So what it is doing is it's saying specifically the Leland and Gray Board is voting to ratify, making a motion.
Oh, yeah, okay.
So, is that a change that I can make and then resubmit those
Absolutely,
minutes for
because we have
for next?
Right, we have to do this at our next meeting, so if you resubmit those, and we'll repost them, Allison will repost the draft, and then we'll approve them or not at the next meeting.
And then we can put them in the consent agenda for next meeting.
Right, if they're all ready. And I think that makes it that clarifies it a little better.
And you can see as a board we have a number of minutes because we've been meeting so much.
Yeah, we do.
But that's understandable.
That's okay.
And then the bullying policy we'll have to take up at that time, too.
On the February 5th meeting, the one that I took notes on, is it Peter Lilienthal?
Yes.
Is he the former auditor? He was at the meeting.
Yes, he is.
So he was part of the public, or was he?
Yes, he's a citizen.
I would suggest that if you were putting him on there, I would have written him as a Leland Gray elected auditor.
Elected auditor.
So we could do that for that February 5th one.
Yeah, he wouldn't. He is a member of the public, but he is an actual. He has a title.
Okay.
Yeah.
He's an elected auditor for the Leland Gray High School District.
And his term would have expired June 30th. June 30th of this year.
I think so.
Okay. Well, at any rate, he's very agreeable.
Yeah, he didn't speak against eliminating the auditors.
No.
I kind of did.
I gave an opportunity too at the previous meeting, at the auditors meeting.
Yeah.
Okay, let's.
And I did notice there was an amendment to that motion saying, as long as we do a professional audit.
Right. Yes. Of
which
course.
I thought was a good point.
That's a good point. Yep.
So.
Yeah. Let's see, what else do we have here? So just so you know that the adoption of the bullying policy, you've already warned that, and that'll have to happen at your next meeting with a quorum. So we'll probably continue that in consent agenda unless I receive other
Stephen, when we send out the agenda for the March meeting, I would suggest that we also reissue all of this stuff that's in the consent agenda, including all those minutes, because
people
have to add 112, because it's just been so long, and I want to make sure everybody has them attached to it.
Yeah.
And the bullying piece. Anything else?
The executive session I had in mind regarding a personnel issue, just so the public isn't alarmed, there's nothing negative or big news there, but it's something that I wanted to consult an executive session about with the board, but we will proceed. I have briefed Emily on the issue, and I think we'll proceed in a positive way, and look forward to that executive session explaining things at your March meeting, right?
Yep, no issues.
Best we can do.
No issues, no problem.
Yeah. Okay. Great.
Okay.
I have a quick question. I saw the emails about the safety concerns.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Doesn't, I mean,
Well,
is it public knowledge what that was all about?
Well,
Or no?
oh, yeah. No, I mean, I can say some things. I mean, there, in retrospect, from some point of view, it may have been a little bit a more aggressive cautionary action on the part of the superintendents than we would, you know, the next time, given the same circumstances. We learn from each circumstance as it goes along. That's what I'm trying to say.
It's not like everybody's
in a diplomatic way. But on the other hand, it's better to err on the side of caution. Now, of course, that can cause greater anxiety, depending on, and we learned something about the use of Alert Now, and I think, you know, putting out a second one in my voice probably wasn't as reassuring as I would have intended it to be with some people. There, you know, in present political circumstances, there are some parents for whom no measures are sufficient to you know, satisfy their need for safety and security. Different schools in the SU are taking different measures, not because I want them all to be different, but because, in fact, there are different locations for schools, different circumstances. The personnel within the building may have a different psychological awareness or sensitivity. We had a meeting last night with the Townsend School District, the school board. They're installing a couple of panels of bulletproof glass in a key area because they believe that the administrative assistant there is in a vulnerable situation. And seconds provided for safety might be important to sound an alarm. So, but this is not something that I would necessarily promote in a universal way, although I understand some schools nationwide are installing bulletproof glass in every single floor-level building, classroom. You can imagine the expense. The advice from our state police head of such crises points out to the superintendents that there's no way we can spend our way out of this situation. So, you know, I caution us against getting too carried away, but on the other hand, that's a political discussion, and certainly something that the boards, all my boards, need to consider for their own particular schools, and certainly advise you know, the administration regarding your need for greater security.
Stephen, I actually hope it comes from the other direction.
Well, there's something else going on
because,
there.
Well, all I'm saying is I would hope that the administration is best suited to make decisions around the safety of the school building, just like around curriculum or anything else, because boards don't operate schools. I would hope that the recommendations would come from the principals to the boards, not from the boards to the principals.
But what I recognize is that there is a logic, a cold analysis, cost-benefit analysis, and a logic that does not respond to the psychological needs of some of our constituents and some of our employees in certain buildings. And that is an issue that needs to be addressed,
Stephen, I recognize
and discussed. And, you know.
But what I would say is when it comes to the safety of our students, who knows the school better than our administrators? You know, and I would hope that, you know, we put the safety of our students first.
Well, that point is well taken. I will say something else. The Lieutenant Favreau down at Paul Favreau down at the barracks here in Brattleboro is going to brief and call the superintendents together of the county, of the region, and we'll work together, and then we'll proceed with the the principals, and include the administrative assistants, because after all, most of our buildings, the administrative assistant, is the person who's really the watching the door most frequently, and we'll look for their professional review of our emergency plans, and this is an ongoing process. Townsend has among the most active emergency planning group, and they meet quite frequently, and I send a representative to every one of those meetings, and have attended some myself, in fact, a tabletop exercise. The other town that does have an active emergency management person is Marlboro. So, as I said, I have a family of schools here and districts, and they're all in their own in their own way. I have to recognize there are unique characteristics of each. But things went well. I mean, there were, just like with calling a snow day or not calling a snow day. I mean, I'm the superintendent. I have to make a decision that, the way it goes is not going to meet everybody's, satisfaction. And I just endeavor to respond to each person as best we can. I spend a lot of time on the phone in response to that emergency situation with individual parents, as well as some email. But it's part of the job, and it's an important service to the community because nothing's more important than to take care of the kids.
So please share with Doreen our sadness over her loss, but that we look forward to meeting with her in March over all of those reports, and thank her also as well, if you will. I know the board agrees. We were very impressed with the level of detail in every one of those reports, and we'll be able to...
As we usually are.
As we always are. That's
up to the usual standard, if not exceeding it, that's for sure.
And that's there's a lot in there for us to talk about, and we look forward to having.
Well, that's the way instructional leaders can drive the process of change. And it's very important that we pay attention to those indicators. So I'm sure the board is very supportive of looking at it, and looking at it critically, not with rose-colored glasses, but from all sides.
Absolutely.
Take off the impress held glasses and
And I might
put on the let's get to work glasses.
I might just explain before we leave that I'm to the public. I'm celebrating Abraham Lincoln's birthday today. This is why I'm so dressed, and I did get 4 of the 7 elementary schools.
Is there a rabbit in there?
And I have my notes here, my quotations from Abe, and I just would share a couple of them with you here. Now, Abraham Lincoln was sort of, conscious about how homely he was, to put it basically, and I explained to the kids. They call that common. In those days they call it a common person. And he has this quote: "Common-looking people are the best in the world. That is the reason the Lord makes so many of them." and then
I've got to say, that wasn't one of his more profound statements.
No, there's some profound ones here. But anyway, the other one about the slavery says, "Whenever I hear anyone arguing for slavery, I feel the strong impulse to see it tried on him personally."
Yeah.
And then he was noted for these whistle-stop train rides, and he'd step out on the platform, and I'd try to explain to the kids, and none of the kids get this joke, but we'll see what you do with it.
See how the board does?
It's a politician in 1860s, trying to warm up the crowd. Okay, so I've stepped out onto this platform that I may see you and that you may all see me. And in this arrangement, I have the best of the bargain.
Yeah.
That's it. And then I always leave the kids, today I always left the kids with these parting remarks. I ask them about liberty and about whether they're making up their own minds and thinking for themselves now. This is usually 5th and 6th grade. Or whether they're doing everything their parents said. And I said, well, you don't need to tell me, but just imagine. I said, but here's the advice from President Lincoln. Stand with anybody that stands right. Stand with him while he is right, and part with him when he goes wrong. So if you stick to that, kids, you'll serve your families well and yourself very well in the future.
Good advice. Good advice. Now you just have to figure out what's right now.
Well, that one well, I do drop out of.
You look great, Steve.
I do drop out of, what do you call it?
It's just amazing to think about back then and how mass
And also, he's responsible for declaring the first Thanksgiving, and I didn't read that speech to the kids.
We can't have a motion to adjourn, but we're going to adjourn by consensus anyway.
I guess we're going to fall apart here, right?
Adjourn by
Thank you all for coming anyway, even though we
Thank you.
official.